Hey team, welcome back to another episode of the Intentional Agribusiness Leader podcast. Got a really special one for you here today. I'm on with Chad Pinter from Western Milling. He's the CEO over there and has got a cool story behind all that. So Chad, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Excited to engage with you.
Well, it's already been a good conversation. We're a half an hour into it and we didn't record anything. And we probably should
Yes.
have. So looking forward to seeing what we can create for the folks here today. Chad, everybody gets the same question at the onset. And that's what does it mean for you to be intentional?
I think intentional for me is really about, how do I set out the outcomes that we're looking for? What are the pathways? What are the outcomes that are desired? And so many times the whirlwind of the day catches us, right? So there's activities going on all day and we can get sucked into the whirlwind and just that kind of consume us all. So intentional to me is stepping back from the whirlwind ahead of time before it comes, because it's going to come. And
Hmm.
and in that saying, what are the most important things to achieve? What do we need to get done so that
Yeah.
we don't get distracted by some of the whirlwind, which is important, but it's also
Right.
important to be able to move forward, the business forward and, initiatives forward.
Yeah. It's a really good observation because I've and a really good way to put it because a lot of people I know, well, all of us for that matter, it's we're often well intended. Like we want to do well, right? And it's the stuff that comes up day to day. I think somebody's just telling me yesterday on a call, like I make my plan for the day, and then I step into the office, and by 8:05, my plan gets shot to hell.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
so I was telling I write my wife an email almost every morning. I don't do this every morning. It's called the daily brief. So it should be the somewhat daily brief, but it's just what it is for me is a chance to reflect on my day. And here's what's coming. But I communicate that to her because where we get lost in the whirlwind is when we don't communicate about what's going on. We've got six kids in two different countries from 8 to 22 years old, a lot going on and a business to run, and she's got a business and we're doing a lot. She's got a book coming out, a lot of things going on. So I try to take that time to just think through. I look at a little scripture, I send her a little prayer, and I'm like, hey, here's the schedule, this is what's going on today. Anyway, my reflection to her today was like, it's the 8th of March as we record this. Said it feels like we're at the start of round 3 of a 12 round fight, and we were super clear on the game plan. That last week of December, we took some time, went skiing, and we wrote down the game plan for 2024. But it feels kind of like we're in that whirlwind, we're in the fight. It's easy to forget the game plan when you get into it,
Yes.
right? So I'm curious, how do you and Heather, how do you take care of that for you? Once you get
Yeah.
into the thick of it.
We spend time almost most every morning, and I travel a lot. She travels a lot. So it's not every morning. I would say every morning, most every morning we're together. We spend
Mhm.
time just talking and and with intention. Like, what do we want
Mhm.
out of today? What is going on in our life? What needs to have a shift? Where are we spending our energy? And a lot of that
Mhm.
is, forward thinking. We're not really spending time reflecting back as much as we are, looking
Yeah.
forward. So it's that intention, and then a lot of times at the end of the day, we each have different energy patterns. She's much more energetic in the morning. I tend to be more energetic in the evening, kind of
Mhm.
as the day.
Yep.
And so we have, in the evening we spend time, but not as in deep a conversation. We tend to spend time a little more lighthearted. And so
Sure.
it kind of works with our rhythms.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. Well, it's communication is important, and I mean, unfortunately, I know a lot of people listening to this maybe just haven't sat down on a consistent basis lately and had some of those deep conversations. Other than, hey, here's what's going on with the kids today. This is my work schedule. It
Yes.
becomes about that. So I think that's
Yes.
really intentional. That's cool. Tell us a little bit about your company, your background, Western Milling. Give us a lowdown on that and your role there as CEO.
Yeah, so Western Millen was formed in 2000. We had two founders. I came in 2007 and came in as a VP of corporate development. which is kind of a generic title. I think it was more get on the bus and then figure out where to put me.
Mhm.
And then I went in, I became the VP of sales and did that for 5 years. I I had 1 year as a VP of sales and the CFO. And then I
Mhm.
went on to be the CFO for a few years. I became the president of our pet food business as well as the CFO. Then became the COO for a couple of years. Went back to the CFO role as we went through another sale. I'll kind of come back to this. And then stepped in the CEO role not quite 2 years ago upon a sale to a third party. So founders, two founders, number of people were owners or members because we're an LLC, and I was one of them. And then we sold to our employees in 2015 and as an ESOP, and then we sold to a third party in 2022. And that's when I became the CEO.
Wow.
So,
Well, storied history. So Western Milling, I heard pet food division. So I'm assuming there must be a livestock division and all the other things that go with it.
yeah. Thank you for
Yeah.
I didn't clarify that. So Western Milling, we are about a $2 billion company in revenue. We're
Hmm.
headquartered in California. We have operations. I just lost you.
No, you're good.
You got me. Okay. Um, we just so Western Milling headquartered in California. We have operations across the Western US. We do ship product across the United States. Um, and we have multiple business functions. So we have an ag input side where we sell seed and fertilizer into the farming community. We have a
Okay.
commercial feed. We have a retail feed. So we what I like to say is we feed animals with names and we feed animals without names. So production
Got it.
agriculture as well as backyard animals. And and we ship the backyard the branded product across the United States through Chewy's and Walmart and PetSmart, among others. We have a
Yeah.
lot of retail in California. We do a lot of local retail um, outlets as well, so
Okay.
independent retailers.
Sure.
Um, pretty pretty significant business, and what a lot of people don't know is California is the number one agricultural state in the United States. We
Hmm.
have we have 20% of the dairy cows in the United States, and most people think of dairy, they think of Wisconsin.
Right.
The county that we're headquartered in, if you took our county and pulled it out and made it its own state, we'd probably be the sixth or seventh largest dairy state, and California would still be number one without it. Um,
Wow. Hmm.
there's it's agriculture is very significant in California, and we're kind of in the heart of that.
Wow. Wow, you're right in it. That's big time. So I have a question about this the backyard animals, and I was thinking about backyard chickens. I mean that's got to be a significantly growing business, isn't it? I mean every
It
time I
is.
see an influencer on YouTube, they're talking about having their own backyard chickens and telling everybody that they should have their own. So what
It
how
is.
big is that?
It's significant for us in that space. And like I said, we ship. It's Cruise Perfection is the brand. We ship that
Mhm.
across the United States, and
Wow.
really it was big before COVID. But when COVID
Hmm.
happened, you saw the shift of people like
Sure.
be home, and I want to. It's almost investing in the homestead or investing in the home, and it was a
Yeah.
fun thing for people to do. And then I think they realized the benefits of they fell in love with the idea of it, and
Mhm.
there's a connection to their food, and I think that that's been a big deal. So we have organic product and conventional product that we ship,
Mhm.
and again that literally goes across the United States.
Wow, very cool. Well, that more conversation on that stuff for another day. But I think it's fascinating all the different facets of the industry and things like that where there's growing opportunities as well. But you brought up the term ESOP, and I'm guessing some probably picked up on it and understand what that is, but a lot may not. Can you talk a little bit about ESOP and what that means and how that was beneficial to the employees of Western Milling?
Yeah, so ESOP is really it's an employee stock ownership program, and so the employees get, in our case, it was 100%. We sold 100% of the company to the employees. and the
Mhm.
employees didn't literally write a check. It was almost like a grant. And for us,
Mhm.
we looked at it and said, how do we go back to 2015? There's two benefits of in my mind, two major benefits of an ESOP. One is you return value to the people that are doing the work. So
Mhm.
everybody's aligned in value creation because an ESOP, pass that along. And then the second one
Mhm.
is ESOPs on the front end are tax-free entities. So you get to maintain cash flow to
Mhm.
reinvest in the company. Because really ESOP is a retirement program. It's
Yep.
governed by the Department of Labor.
Mhm.
Uh, and so you don't, the only tax comes down the road. In effect, the employee gets a free benefit, a free value,
Yep.
and they get taxed as they pull it out.
Mhm.
Um, but that can be in retirement. So it's a benefit to the business to allow growth. It's a benefit to the business to get aligned, make sure everybody has ownership mindset, the best
Mhm.
you can align that. And so that was those were really the goals of how do we make sure we get back to the employees and we generate cash flow for the enterprise itself.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's such a cool concept. I have a friend who helps companies go through the process of becoming an ESOP. And that was when I first hearing him. Actually, I heard him talk about it on stage with Tony Robbins several years ago at a business mastery conference, and it really up leveled my thinking about what's possible as an intentional leader when you really in a way to be able to create value for your employees as well as obviously your customers. And so the within that ecosystem, when a company becomes an ESOP, I don't have any of the figures memorized, but what we do know is that employee engagement tends to be much higher, longevity and talent retention tends to be much higher,
Yep.
and then eventually, when as it was in the case when yours sold, that employee gets paid out.
Yeah.
Based on, as an owner would for their percentage or whatever, however much stock they had in the
Yeah.
company. And then obviously the tax advantages that kick it, as a $2 billion company, I would imagine you have a fairly significant tax liability,
Yes. Yes.
right? And so
Yes.
being able to kick that to the back end so you can keep growing the business in the near term, what a cool gift. So
Yeah. Yeah. It
yeah.
was our timing was worked out really well. Um, it worked out well for our employees, worked out well in the business from a cash flow. And
Mhm.
yeah, it was a process. It took us
Yeah,
about 11 months to get from A to Z in the ESOP itself.
you bet.
But it's no different than a normal sale process. You go through
Mhm.
kind of that full process from evaluation but at the end of the day, the effort's worth it because the employees are rewarded.
Yeah.
And that's part of, in some ways, it's part of it is the American dream, right? We all get a
Mhm.
slice of the value that's
Yeah.
created.
Well, and I mean and it's so hard for so many to be able to get something like that. It's just you have to wait for your 401k to mature or whatever your IRA or other retirement programs that maybe you're involved with. And there's just companies that have gone that way, and I've been involved with a few of them over the years. There's something different inside the culture of that organization as opposed to a traditional co-op or a traditional um, privately owned company or a private equity owned company where there's very few that are going to benefit when that company experiences an exit at some point or get and whatever
Yeah.
that looks like. There's very few that really benefit, and in this way, I mean, so many really get to benefit. The incentive is to stick around and maximize it.
Yes. Yes.
Good stuff. Well, talk to us a little bit about, so that sort of lends itself to one of our questions around culture. We think a lot of people, a lot of companies give lip service to culture, but are probably living more so in reactive cultures. So curious, what are you doing with your team? What do you guys focus on in order to create a great culture at your guys' company?
Yeah, I would say so. It's an evolving culture for us, and part of it is because of the transition. We sold the sale in 2022. Going back, and we have two founders, and the two founders really established a culture early on in 2000,
Mhm.
which was very entrepreneurial, very driven towards the customer. And the driven towards customer still exists today. I would say we took a lot of calculated and sometimes uncalculated risk. Um, we would kind of fire aim ready a lot of times, and that was we kind of had that maverick or a cowboy culture of we're just going to go do it, and so that was prevalent, but it was always focused on the customer. How do we serve the customer? How do we move forward for the customer? And I'd say, our culture today is still focused on the customer, but it's much more risk profiled. So, how do we, is this the right move? And so it's an evolving culture because we have a different owner, and that's normal, right? So taking
Right.
businesses to evolution is happens and it's normal. So the evolving culture is really, integrating the new owner with our business, and it's learning both ways, right? The new owner is trying to learn our culture and how we do things, and we're trying to learn what does the new owner need and want. And so, you
Right.
have kind of a framework that you think it is, and then over time that framework starts to kind of solidify. And we're in that process. We're 20 at this point, we're 20 months in to the transition. And
Hmm.
so, a lot of it is understood, but there's still things that are evolving. So we set
Sure.
out and said, what are the elements of our culture? And we had, at Western Milling, we had defined that before, and we had four of them, which
Mm-hmm.
are strive for customer success, act like an owner, and, do the right thing. And then
Mm-hmm.
um, I said there's four, and I'm drawing a blank on the fourth one, but we
Yeah, that's
added
right.
we added two more with the new owner, which is deliver results and
Mm-hmm.
grow and prosper. So
Mm-hmm.
embrace growth and growth mindset.
Got it.
Those are
So
the
there's kind of it becomes kind of a marriage of that evolving culture because it's impossible to not have a new owner or even like a new CEO impact the culture in some way, shape, or form, positively, negatively, neutral, because it really is always driven from the top down. So, but
yeah
that's an interesting approach, right? So you're taking the old values and then also incorporating some new values because everything has to evolve. Yeah, that's a cool
yeah
approach.
yeah. And I think a lot of our cultural elements prior to the last sale was they were much
Hmm.
more emotional in the sense of own it and embrace or strive for the customer success. Those are they weren't about results. They were about
Hmm.
kind of the feeling and the mindset. Now with
Yeah.
deliver results and kind of embrace growth
Hmm.
um, and change, that that adds a little bit of a shift. That
Yeah.
another perspective, another element, and it,
Right.
it it's a healthy one.
Hmm. Well, if you look at I'm just evaluating, getting to hear all of this for the first time. So I'm just looking at the evolution of that. And I'm thinking what must have happened over the course of those, that time frame. So, and my own business has evolved a lot, and I mean, a little bit less than half as old in terms of years. We're 11 years into it. You're 24 years into it now, almost. So a lot happens. Okay, that's just suffice to say. A lot happens over the course of a decade. Inside of a business, people come and go, leaders change, etc.
Yeah.
But you were entrepreneurial startup maverick culture in the beginning with some core values that were consistent, and then you have this you sell it to the employees and it becomes employee owned. So
Yes.
was there a shift in that time frame in culture? Was it consistent? Did you maintain
It
that sort of
was
maverick go get it mentality?
well, we had a little more structure that was required because in ESOP there's a fiduciary, there's a board, you have to have a board.
Hmm.
Previously, the board was really the management team. And so there's a structural element of ESOP. So we had to have a board and we had to go through certain things. And there's a different fiduciary responsibility. When you're privately owned, if you make $1 or $10 million, it, if the owner's happy, that's all that matters.
Hmm. Right.
But as an ESOP, you have to run things a little different. You know, it's a fiduciary responsibility that
Right.
you have to maintain. And so it had a
Hmm.
little bit of a cultural shift, but it was the same management team. Um,
Hmm.
and so I think the cultural shift is more just the awareness for the employees and the engagement of, hey, you're an owner, and
Yeah.
being able to talk about those things.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. And now being owned by more of a family office, private equity type outfit, if I would like people to think about it this way. So now a company being owned by a, a group of investors whose job is to generate a return on their investment. So
Yeah,
they, by rule, have to think about money differently, investments differently. The companies that they own, they think about this differently than
yeah,
say a founder would, or even maybe your CEO, or executive
yeah,
team thinks about it. And there's a lot that goes on with that. So anyway, it's just kind of I wanted to mention that because from we think about an intentional leadership standpoint, you have to be really intentional at every phase of that and really careful, but also brave and courageous at every
yeah,
phase. And sometimes you have to throw down and defend the culture that you've created,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, and there's there's an acknowledgement of a new reality, right? And so life is
Hmm.
always evolving and situations are evolving, and the recognition that what was true 10 years ago may not be true today, or what was true 20 years, but you still want to take the good and keep the good of that and just build upon
Yeah.
it, right? So but change is inevitable. And I think a lot of times it's like, well, but I like this or I like that element. Well, we don't have to lose that, but we need
Hmm.
to gain these other things as well. And so it's a natural maturation. It's a natural evolution of the business. And so,
Yeah.
it's intentional in the sense of, okay, let's understand reality and let's move forward with that reality in mind, as opposed to, energy backwards doesn't intentionally propel, it doesn't propel you forwards.
Right.
It
Right.
allows stuck in the past. And
Yeah.
that's, I remember early in my career, I worked for I'll say the largest privately held company in the United States. And without naming the name, there was a lot of, I remember feeling a lot of times early in my career, there were people blocking things because they just didn't want it to change. They didn't have a
Mm.
good business reason, but it's almost like they didn't want the effort of the change, when you could look at it and go, well, that's the bit makes business sense. And so how do
Hmm.
we not replicate, in my mind is, how do we not replicate that mindset? Because
Right.
it's easy to get in complacency. It's easy to get into, well, that's how it used to be.
Hmm.
But the world and the situations continue to evolve, and we have to move forward with that in mind.
Yep. Yep.
If the
Yeah.
world
Super.
outside is changing faster than you're changing
Right.
it, there's a problem.
I
Right? You've got
concur.
to
Yeah.
change ahead of it.
Yep. That's a very intentional statement right there. Because we obviously we face a lot of it, and it's especially in our work, we face a lot of that. We get into the culture change and trying to help organizations move forward. So we have a lot of people that come into our classrooms who have been doing it the same way for a long time.
Yeah.
And it's part of our job to help them help bring awareness to the fact that change is either A, inevitable, or B, maybe fun,
Yes.
right? And exciting.
Yes. Yes.
So we actually define, so in our work, complacency leads to what we call survival mode. And when you have an employee or a team member, friend, family member for that matter, who's stuck in survival mode, they actually don't know it. It's an unconscious way of existing, right? They can't, they've resigned to the idea that this is as good as it's going to get. And so the method behind the madness in our work is that we create discovery moments to help those people awaken from that from that survival mindset and say, oh, interesting, right? Oh, that's so, and as an example, we do at our Thriving Leader program, every one of them starts off with a 6 a.m. or a 7 a.m. kickboxing or CrossFit workout.
Okay.
So I want you to picture we've got ag retail guys and gals that in and I'm not making fun of them. In many cases, have not worked out in decades,
Yeah. That's fun.
and they're mandated to go to this workout, and they're mad at me. They don't want to be there. They have no desire to be a part of this, but they go through it, and something magic happens when that team from that company or the group that comes to one of our public events, over the course of that hour, they loosen up, the energy starts to cut loose, they start to have fun, and they bond.
Yeah.
And so when we start the training in the classroom at 9 a.m., I have a completely different group of people than I had at 6 a.m. And we can go faster and deeper, and I mean, we can do all the things because now we've given them the experience of experiencing that maybe I'm just getting by in my physical state,
Yeah.
and we ask them questions like, how does that affect your performance? How does that play into 3 o'clock in the afternoon when you really should make one more call, two more calls, right?
Yeah.
But you're too tired, right? And so you can't get through the afternoon without a pinch of Skull and a Monster Energy drink.
Yeah.
Right. And so we're trying to awaken people to the fact that that's your physical experience is a big part of your job. But that's where that complacency leads to survival mode. Obviously, yes, in the physical sense, but in the performance at work, my leadership, my team, my relationship, my marriage, my parenting, all those things.
Very true. Very true. It's like, how do you keep that energy flowing,
Yeah,
throughout the day? And that's
exactly.
there's a bit of art and a bit of science, right? There's
Yeah, completely, completely. Okay, well, we're gonna have to bring this in for a landing here in the next
okay.
5 minutes because I know you're a busy guy and got a schedule to keep, and I'm back to back with our conversation today. But we're just doing a little bit of a speed round and get to know Chad a little bit more before we close it out. So, what is something what's been a big challenge that you've had to overcome? One of the biggest hurdles you've had to overcome in the course of your career?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, there's been lots of them. That's part of the, I'll say, the journey, right? You, the struggle is part of the beauty. Not that you want to
Mm,
struggle, but that creates conviction and it creates, but I would say just various transitions. There could be a transition, from from new owner. It could be struggling businesses that we've had in the past. We've had a few of them, right? And we've had to get in and turn those around or make decisions around them. And we've had great success stories with those. But the struggle, the hardest part is at times like I don't know what to do. Like we don't have an answer other than get in and dig in and just keep working and figure it out. And fortunately, most of those have turned out really well, where it's been the desire to work and the element of working, and the passion towards that has created, turnaround. I'm
yeah.
not giving you a specific, but all those things would be elements of, hey, these are significant impacts that, most people don't really want to deal with an impact. They want to deal with, something that's fun.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy and it's fun and it's light, and that's great. We all want that at some level, but the challenges come, and that's where the heart comes out. Where's your heart? Are you convicted? So, kind of an indirect answer to your question.
Yeah, I got it. I got it. What's been your biggest? So that's biggest hurdle question. What been your biggest win?
I think it's different investments we've made as a company, that have really
Hmm.
paid off. And the other biggest win is just the relationships. Life is really about relationships, and for me, and so the relationships that have been built, create the wins. I've always been a team sports guy, and I love that
Hmm.
atmosphere. So the biggest wins are generally with teams and together with others, and not the business success, the personal bonds, the personal relationships.
Yeah,
Those are the best wins in business.
love it. Good stuff, man. If you could recommend a book or a podcast for people to pay attention to, what would you throw at them?
Yeah, my go-to would be The Power of Vulnerability by Brene Brown, which is not a business
Hmm.
book, but it
Yeah,
is a
yeah.
life book. And she's funny. It's not really a book, it's a series, but uh an audio, it's on Audible. But yeah, she's
Hmm.
fantastic, and it really gets you kind of in touch with who you are. And
Yep.
I think at the end of the day, authenticity as a leader is the most important thing. If you can be
Hmm.
it's one of the most important. You have to have other elements, but authenticity, without authenticity, other things get undermined. And
Mhm.
if you start from a place of genuine and authentic, that's a good foundation board.
Yeah, fantastic. Great recommendation. I'm actually surprised nobody has brought it up yet. Maybe I shouldn't be in the ag industry because but I know there are a lot of people out there that have read it, myself included. So definitely take a look at take a look at Brene Brown, all Brene Brown's work.
Yeah.
If you don't read the book, go get the TED Talk, which was pretty viral as well. So good.
Yes.
What do you do to keep your energy up and stay productive?
Yeah, a lot of it is, I travel a lot. So I do a lot
Mhm.
of, pick my times. I know my body cycle. I know the energy. So, try to eat healthy, try to get some level of exercise, try to keep my mind clear. I'll do
Mhm.
some level of prayer or meditation or um, kind of sit in silence at times too. Let my
Mhm.
mind calm the mind to free the space. And a lot of times
Good.
that's a energy inducing. And I get energy from people, I get energy from, experiences. So it's important for me to be engaged and interactive but also have that quiet time. I
Yeah.
balance the two out. Most people call me an extrovert, but I have a lot of introversion in me as well, where I enjoy, some
Yeah.
downtime alone to recharge.
Good stuff. Well, if you guys are not picking up on a theme yet, as I talk to all these different leaders, one of the big themes you should be picking up on is quiet time. I know not enough of you are getting it, so pay attention. These guys are showing you something consistent. So, Chad, this has been a fantastic conversation. We need to grab dinner at some point and
Yes.
dive deeper on stuff. But I appreciate you being on here and taking the time to share your wisdom and your experience on the Intentional Agribusiness Leader podcast.
Yeah, I appreciate the invite, Mark, and look forward to reconnecting.
Sounds good.